Welcome to Two Therapists Talking. The hope for this podcast is to talk about important issues related to couples and individuals who are struggling in their lives with many different issues. I'm David Thompson, a marriage and family therapist.
And I'm Sherry Christensen, marriage and family therapist. Please join us as we explore these issues together, and we hope you will learn and be enlightened along the way. Come find us at twotherapisttalking.com. If you like what you're hearing, please get on and rate us and subscribe to the podcast. Hello and welcome back to Two Therapists Talking. I'm Sherry.
And I'm David.
And we are revisiting episode number 2 on talking to your children about healthy sexuality.
Which was a great, if you haven't heard that episode, great introduction to how and what and some really important ideas like how much do we share? What's our attitude need to be when we're approaching this?
Right.
I always think about, I have some of my favorite pictures of my daughters specifically are them holding scary things like a scorpion or a spider. So if I find a spider in the garden, like the bigger the better, and I would call my daughters over and be like, look how fascinating this is. Hey, look, Let's pick it up. And the point was, and I have a picture of this little hand and the spider's like as big as their palm. Don't worry, it wasn't venomous. I know my stuff well. You don't describe spiders as poisonous. It's venomous, and it wasn't a black widow or anything else, but these wolf spiders or whatever. The point is, she was totally okay with it because I was totally okay with it.
Yes.
And that's the point. So if we're totally okay with talking about these things, our children will just follow our lead, and it won't even be a thing.
Yes.
And so
that's what we're hoping for. And, you know, one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, well, aren't you going to destroy their innocence? Like, we're trying to
this is a
keep
good
their
point.
innocence intact.
This is a good point.
And the response is, we want them to be innocent, not naive.
I'll admit, though, I love it. I hate those conversations where it's like it's kind of time, they're getting older to go into more kinds of detail. There is something that just feels sort of different after.
I do think that...
And it has nothing to do... I mean, Sherry's absolutely right. We want them innocent, not naive.
Yes.
But it is kind of a turning point, isn't it?
Well, and the thing is if you've been having these conversations all along, it really isn't as big of a deal as we think it is.
Yeah.
And you're not you're not destroying innocence. You're destroying naivety. You don't want them to not have any clue about anything.
Right.
It's
cute,
them,
but then they got to grow up.
Right. Well, and it's not even going to be cute, especially considering what is out there now.
Sure.
Right? You want them to be innocent, which requires some information. And then they can make good and healthy choices. And you can better protect them if they have some information.
Definitely.
And so you want to be having these conversations, as much information as is appropriate for their age and stage.
Which is a good question. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of.
Yes.
As you've presented on this. Kind of as a rule of thumb, how much do we share and when?
Right. Yes. And so we're going to talk about that. And again, going back from our previous episode, our past episode, just this last one of the important pieces of information that will help guide you in this is how much information are they asking for?
Yeah.
Right? So start small and build as they continue to show and demonstrate interest, right, in this process. So one of the things that I did after presenting so much and having people say, I wish I could just record your voice saying it, because when you say it, it sounds easy to talk about this.
Yep.
And so one of the things that I did was I wrote a book about how to talk to your children about healthy sexuality from very young ages, because really you do want to be able to start as early as birth. And there are different things that you talk about at every stage in this process. And so we want to start to introduce these concepts very early on. And so the book that I wrote is called My Body is a Gift from God, Introducing Conversations to Safeguard Children. And this is a, it's going to sound funny when I say it. It's a picture book, but it's a book about appreciating your body and all the amazing things that it can do. It can learn, it can grow, it can taste, it can smell, right? And that is, it absolutely introduces conversations, and we'll talk a bit about this in a minute. But it does go into an ability for you to talk about harder conversations or things that sound scarier or harder. But this is where healthy sexuality starts, is with an appreciation and a love of your body.
Which I think is just awesome, because I know a lot of parents tend to think of sexuality as this separate sort of box that you open when you absolutely have to,
Right.
instead of being integrated into just the wonder of our bodies and senses and how wonderfully made we are. Mm-hmm. So I love the concept of, instead of like, I need to talk to my kids about, sex.
Yes.
We're talking about what the body can do and how it's built.
Yes.
And how awesome it is, which doesn't that just feel like a much better approach to all of this? Mm-hmm. Way more natural, and it won't have the same reluctance or hesitancy that, I need to talk about sex will have.
Yes.
So it's a wonderful approach.
Yes. And it really is the beginnings of appreciating healthy sexuality, because what we want is for our children to come into adulthood loving their bodies.
Definitely.
Loving what their bodies can do, appreciating all of the different aspects of their bodies, sexual, physical, emotional, just all of that. You want them to understand how their bodies work in all of those different ways as
Right.
well. And so this is just part of bodies. It's part of having this incredible body experience. And so that is one of the first aspects of healthy sexuality that you want to talk with children about. And so I love, this book talks about those kinds of things in it. And it has these amazing illustrations that my friend Cameron did. And they're just beautiful. Like, you just read this book, and I've literally had parents come up and just tell me, this is my kid's favorite book. They want to read it all the time because they're
awesome.
Just these sweet, gentle, fun illustrations that help us have this incredible appreciation for our bodies and what they can do.
And I would put a plug in here that, at least for me, one of the greatest challenges I have as a therapist is in helping people to increase their sense of self-worth.
Yes.
And so this book, you think of it as like healthy sexuality. This is just healthy self-concept.
Yes.
And self-worth, and being raised to see themselves this way and how it relates to healthy sexuality actually will help them to feel better about themselves overall. So your children just feeling good about who they are, mm-hmm. and not being so stuck maybe in this, I'm not good enough, or, we have adults in therapy who we want them to do affirmations, and we want them to look in the mirror
Right.
and say certain things to feel better and to appreciate what their body does for them.
Yes.
Look at what my head, my shoulders, my lungs, my joints, my bones, my muscles. Mm-hmm. And imagine if from the time you can talk and before you're hearing about this and honoring your body and appreciating your body, how much easier it would be as you grow up to continue to honor and appreciate that body.
Yes.
And yourself.
Yep.
So I love, this is doing a lot more than just a healthy sexuality thing.
Right. Well, but isn't that the point? It's that sexuality is a part of our living and growing and breathing and experiencing life experience. And
Definitely.
That is physical, and that is emotional, and that can be spiritual, and it can be mental. I mean, it is all of those things combined. You know, when you really look at what a healthy sexual relationship is and what healthy sexuality is, it combines all of those things.
Right.
It's a concept of us as a whole being. If you're religious, you might see that as like your soul, your body and spirit, your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's what a healthy sexuality is and a healthy sexual relationship is. And so you want to incorporate all of these together from a very young age. You know, and that brings me to a point that that's what society really does that I find is so damaging, is it really separates sexuality from everything else.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
And that's not what it is. And when we separate it, we're missing massively important pieces, right?
Well, we
like,
devalue it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah.
make it less meaningful, not more
Yes.
meaningful.
We're separating it out takes away a lot of the meaning and the important aspects of it. You know, I was just recently interviewed by HBO, and they talked about, you know, one of the questions that the interviewer asked was, well, okay, so fine about all the pornography and masturbation stuff. Well, like, what about just like casual sex? Like, wouldn't that be okay then? And it's like, and that's the concept. It's
Right.
We're separating sexuality away from all of these critically important aspects. The problem is we start doing that when we talk to kids about sex. When we talk to kids about sex, we start doing that, right? We're like, okay, so now we're going to sit down and we're going to have the conversation about the birds and the bees, right? Or they go to health class and they have this conversation. And what is it about? It's about a body process completely devoid of emotional, physical, spiritual, mental, like all of those other aspects.
Right.
And that is it's disjointed and it's unhealthy to
And
talk
easy
about it
to
that way.
diminish behavior in that area because it feels detached somehow.
Yes, it's very, very separate from what's actually going on. But even religiously, we will do this, right? We separate it out. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to have the chastity talk. And,
Yep.
you know, we sort of talk about it in these really weird, disjointed
Everybody's nodding their head that's listening.
ways, right? Yes. And it's just something that, I don't know, you just noticed my soapbox, I'm sure. But this is a big, big issue. And it really takes away from understanding what healthy sexuality really is, whether you're religious or not.
Yeah.
But that's a big beef I have with, you know, parents is like, you know, if you're going to come at this from a religious angle even, you need to make sure you're incorporating all this stuff. You
Yeah.
can't just chop this off and talk about it in this very disjointed way.
Which is why parents, you read the book first because you make sure that you're feeling good about everything it says. And if some of these concepts are new for you, great. Mm-hmm. Think about them, ponder them, so that when you're taking your kid through, it's like, yeah, I'm on board with this.
Right. And hopefully there isn't anything that's a drastically
Yeah.
a different thing for you here that's like, oh, whoa. It really is written very gently and also in a very general way. But really that's, again, an approach you should take with anything that you're reading that you're going to take to your kids, right? But this book is specifically written to invite your own conversations with your children, to invite your own standards and values as a family. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, I happen to think I have pretty great values and standards, but they're not going to be yours in every single particular.
Right. Yep.
And it's important for you to be able to, as a parent, have those, you know, there's so many books out there that I've read around these types of topics, or even other topics, right, that you want to take to your kids and you want to teach your kids, and you're reading along and you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, but no, so
Yeah.
we'll skip that part, and yes, okay, but no, not that, and And so I worked very specifically to write this book not in that way, so that as you're going through, you're getting to put everything that you believe and want and feel and value and, your own standards in there. So, so again, that body, wonder in their bodies and their amazing bodies. I love the first page. Again, this is religious, so if you were not, then this may not be for you. But it is written to be non-denominational, and just refers to God. So this first page I just love because it says, "God loves me so much, He gave me a special gift, my body. I've lived in my body my whole life." So you just hear this very gentle language that helps them to develop that sense of wonder. And then one of the other parts about teaching young children about healthy sexuality is about their bodies and taking care of them. And so how do you take care of your body, and what do you do to take care of your body? And different cultures and religions and all these different things may have different views and ideals, and you may think that certain foods are more acceptable, right? And so these are different conversations. Every page in this book specifically is designed to invite these conversations, lots of conversations about what the children have experienced, so you learn more about what is going on when they're not with you, or how they've experienced life in regards to their bodies, but also helps you to instill your own family's values about them.
Which, by the way, I think what Sherry's talking about at the end, there's follow-up discussions, because this is meant to be something of discussion, question. For example, who are other trusted adults you can talk to when you have questions, feel uncomfortable, or need help? When you think about a situation, person, music, pictures, etc., how does it make you feel? Right. So there's some good follow-up discussions that prompt, after going through this, conversations with your children or grandchildren or whatever the case may be.
Yes, thank you. That's a very good point.
Because I can see this being really good for, I want to be involved. What's just a really gentle, meaningful way to do it?
Yes, please. Yes, please, grandparents, be involved. Aunts, uncles. Some of my sister has had some fabulous conversations with my children.
Yeah.
About different aspects of healthy sexuality. Because she's younger than me, and so she's hipper and cooler, right? And she's done a great job of fielding questions that I think a lot of people would think would be very uncomfortable to address. So,
but she's read Sherry's book, and so she was prepared.
Yes, and she's open and willing to talk about things, right? And some people aren't. So, so again, there's just a lot of things that you're going to talk with children about, what's healthy touch and things like that are going to be important conversations to introduce, definitely, even from really young ages. And so those are the types of things that that you're going to see in this book, but that are other things that, if you don't have this book, you're welcome to, you're going to want to introduce to children at this age. And so while we're on the topic of my book, which you can get on Amazon, we'll just put a little plug in for that. Yeah. My Body's a Gift from God, Introducing Conversations to Safeguard Children. This book also talks about, it also gives you ways to introduce other challenging topics like body image, like sexual abuse, like pornography, all of those different kinds of big topics that we're like, oh, we can't really talk about that with our 2-year-old. Yes, you can.
And in a
in
very
these ways.
simple way,
Yes.
surprisingly. Yeah. And that's one of the benefits, right? Is as you go through and learn this, it does cover a lot of different things that you think would be really hard to talk about or bring up or address. But then you see it can be very simple, actually.
Yes, simple and gentle, and some things that you maybe might think, oh, I don't know if I could do that. It becomes very, very easy, and in a way where children come away feeling happy and joyful and empowered rather than feeling scared and nervous or shame.
We are on a campaign, a crusade against
shame. Yes. So that's really important, is to be able to introduce these topics in ways that aren't shaming, and in ways that don't leave children feeling scared about the world around them and their future, and
which is a good point, right? Because how often when you hear about this topic, or maybe if your parents talk to you, it was a very fear-based concept.
Yes.
Which is why it's so odd when suddenly it's okay. It's like, how do I not be afraid of this anymore? Or how do I not feel like I'm weird or bad or
wrong? Right. And that's what's so important, is being able to talk about them in ways that, again too, you're looking at protecting your children from, predators and from sexual abuse and from grooming and, all of these things that are such big topics. And how do you talk to your child and not have them feel scared?
Yeah.
And these are some ways that you can do that and talk about things that are big, challenging topics in ways that are calm and that empower them and leave them coming away with positive feelings instead of scared feelings.
Right. So important.
Yeah. Even, I'll just read this. One of the people that commented on this book, Jenny, said, as a young child, I was exposed many times to inappropriate material and practices by a friend. I became addicted to those things. It affected my self-worth and body image, and for years I felt like the world was a scary place. My parents didn't know how to talk to me about sex, and I didn't know how to talk to them. I couldn't get help. I'm so grateful to have this book so I can start talking to my young children about healthy sexuality and help protect them from what I went through.
Wow. So if that sounds like that would be a benefit or something that you want for your children, some of these tips are going to make a big difference.
Right. Again, you certainly don't have to have this book, right? There are many resources out there, and also just understanding the ages and stages and what to be talking with them about in each stage of their growth and progression. And again, at these early stages, you definitely obviously want to be talking about in calm ways, protection from predators, protection from, being touched, from grooming types of practices. But also a lot of the healthy sexuality things you're going to be talking about are healthy touch and appreciating your body and loving your body and how to take care of it properly and all of those different kinds of things. So that's the very, very young stages. So we're looking at from birth to about 5, 6, 7-ish. Those are the kinds of things you're going to be talking to your kids about at those ages.
So I hope this has been really helpful. There's different ages and stages like Sherry talks about, and we want to talk more about that in review or to summarize. And again, this isn't about her book. This is about how we talk to children and what are some things that can help and how helpful the concepts she presents can be. And so it can be really helpful. But here as a summary, some things: approaching sexuality, and I'm looking at Sherry because I don't want to miss any important ones, but the ones that stand out to me for sure: approaching sexuality from a body standpoint, and how wonderful our body is, can reframe the entire concept and conversation into a positive from a scary negative or a don't do. That's a big one. Another big one for me is having the right attitude when talking about this, where you're not afraid or insecure or hesitant or uncomfortable, which is going to have the same impact on them. And so when
Right.
you're talking to your children about these things, be confident, be sure of what you're talking about, believe what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Bite-sized, so give only the information and just
Start
enough
small.
information
Yeah. Just start small.
that they're asking for. Start small and don't give them more than they need. From her example of running off and being like, great, okay, I just need to know what it's called. Birth, okay.
Yeah. We're talking about specifically the ages and stages from birth to about 5 to 7.
Yep.
Again, so we're talking about how amazing our bodies are and wonderful they are, having an appreciation for them, all the things that they can do, and even emotionally, because all of that's connected to our
Yeah.
physical bodies as well,
Yep.
right? And how to take care of them, how to treat them, and all of that. And what does that look like in our homes? And what do we choose to do? And how do we choose to take care of them? What foods do we choose to eat? You know, all of those different kinds of things. Then, of course, we also want to be able to prepare them and keep them safe. So talking about appropriate touch, that's just really critical anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like there's what kind of touch is good
Right.
and what kind of touch is healthy, and, you know, cuddles and loves and, you know, all of those different kinds of things, and being able to have them experience those in good and positive ways.
Yep. And having the conversations often,
Yes.
making it a normal, natural, comfortable thing to talk about.
Right.
So maybe while you're cooking or gardening or doing something else, driving somewhere, have the conversation. Don't be afraid of it.
Yep.
Some of the important concepts that I enjoyed and took from this. So,
Okay, so if you come back next time, we'll keep talking about older children as they progress, like what changes, what new information do we add, and how do we kind of incorporate more mature conversations.
so join us soon.
Thank you for listening to Two Therapists Talking. We look forward to sharing more conversations with you. Connect with us at twotherapisttalking.com or email podcast@twotherapisttalking.com. If you like what you're hearing, please get on and rate us and subscribe to the podcast.